Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of The Push with Nick and KP. I'm KP, Nick is here in attendance with me once more because today we are going to be going through our SmackDown recap. This is the Friday, the 3rd edition of October for Friday Night SmackDown. Let's break everything down, go into all the action, discuss everything that took place across the course of the night. So, opening up the show, we would have a little bit of Cody Rhodes, the American Nightmare, the WWE Undisputed Champion, kicking things off. But before he would be able to get anything really said at all, except for a quick hello, what do you want to talk about, we would get an interruption by none other than Paul Heyman, accompanied by Bronson Reed and Bron Breakker. Before anything could really materialize between these guys, we would quickly get Randy Orton inserting himself into the scene, just to sort of like give Cody some backup. The two have a tag team match alongside each other up against Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed, already advertised for later on in the show. So this is sort of like building things up a little bit later for that. Heyman would say he didn't actually come out here to talk to Cody, although Cody was in the ring when Heyman came out. And instead he came to talk to Randy. So he knew that, you know, by targeting Cody Rhodes, Randy would be very likely to appear. And obviously, you know, if the wise man has an idea, the oracle, it tends to work out that way. So this is exactly, you know, just playing into his hands. So Paul basically starts talking hypotheticals for their match later on tonight, basically saying how, well, if Cody loses, if he takes the pin, then Randy could think, oh, well, that's our WWE champion, really? So he then tried to turn things around. What if the situation was the opposite? What if Randy Orton lost? Just basically talking hypotheticals. And then just sort of like trying to get into the mentality there of Randy Orton, saying, you know, what are the true thoughts of Randy? You know, where does his head lie in this whole situation? Is he really just Cody's buddy? Or does he want the WWE Championship as well? So trying to sort of like lay out some sort of like teasers there for potential something going down the line. He basically goes on to say how the relationship between the two just will not last. There isn't really anything else to take from this one. Once Heyman says that, they just sort of like get down off the apron and they head off to the back. And they leave Randy Orton and Cody to have almost like sort of like an awkwardish style end of segments stare down between the two of them whilst they're watching Heyman and all just disappear. So, yeah, just sort of like, I don't know, just setting the scene, putting in some little teasers, possibly, you know, playing some mental games between the two of them. And yeah, just looking forward to that main event match later on tonight. Following that, we would then have our first match of the night, which was see Sami Zayn heading down to the ring. He would basically put out an open challenge for the United States Championship, as he's been doing over the last few weeks. And this time, we would get once again Carmelo Hayes coming down to the ringside. He didn't quite get there though. He'd basically get to the ramp, and he would essentially just say how, you know, this time he's got nobody holding him back. He literally just had a segment with The Miz a few minutes earlier to this particular segment, basically just backstage saying how, you know what, we're done here. You know, I'm ending this between us, and you know, I don't need you watching my back. I can do things by myself. Miz very unhappy with that. He'd say, really, you're ending things with me? And that would sort of just allow Melo to have a moment to go out and sort of like, you know, initiate another challenge towards Sami Zayn. Melo would go on to say how, you know, he's going to show Sami why he is him, but as he literally says that, The Miz comes up behind him, gives him a skull-crushing finale, and lays him out on the stage. With a little bit of the, you know, the craziness of the situation, and Melo not being able to answer the challenge now, we just randomly get Aleister Black just walk on alongside, and he would come down saying, you know what, I'll take the open challenge instead. So Aleister Black one-on-one with Sami Zayn here for the United States Championship. And this match was pretty fun. This match wasn't too bad. I think out of the you know, the US title open challenges so far, we've had some very high-paced matches, and this one had a little bit of pace in there in times for sure. It was decent enough. It was still a good contest. I quite liked it between the two men. I don't think we've ever seen Sami versus Aleister as far as I can remember. Anyway, this might have been a first-time matchup. But what is a very interesting stat that is definitely a 100% true fact is that this was Aleister Black's first ever singles championship opportunity in WWE. So that is quite crazy on the main roster anyway. So yeah, that's quite crazy to you know, to think about. Never gone up, gone for a world title or a US title, Intercontinental Championship before in the past. This was literally his first opportunity against Sami Zayn, and yeah, it wasn't a bad contest throughout the entirety. It gets to a point in the end where Black looks like he's rolling and he's in the swing of momentum, and then suddenly he just looks over his shoulder, and Damian Priest, the arch enemy, I think Cole said, of Aleister Black, is sort of like just creeping around by the steps. That provides enough of a distraction for Sami Zayn to hit a Helluva Kick, and then following up with a Blue Thunder Bomb to get the victory. Just want to say quickly, loving the the difference of Sami winning matches now, not just using the Helluva Kick, but also transitioning that into the Blue Thunder Bomb. I think it looks pretty clean, pretty nice. It's like a little swift little movement, and yeah, I think it's just it just makes him look a bit better with how he is finishing these matches. So that's a plus for me as well. Loving that side of things. And then, yeah, we get the whole Damian Priest, Aleister Black thing continuing onwards, which I don't think we really thought it was over. And obviously now this clarification that, in fact, it is definitely not. So with that having been said, Sami set off celebrating. He's gone now. He's left with his title as he's won his match. And we get Damian Priest clearing the announce table before then hitting a Razor's Edge on Aleister Black, sending him through the announce table. So that would end our first half of SmackDown here. Just the one match with a little bit of aftermath there of that United States title contest. And then obviously the interaction between Cody, Randy, and The Vision at the start of the show. Nick, how did you make of our first half of SmackDown? Where did this US title open challenge sort of like rank in comparison to that of the previous ones? And yeah, what did you make of the mental games, attempted to be played there by Paul Heyman?
Yeah, we get a vision sandwich, as we so commonly refer to them as now, because it's something we see so often. They start the show, they end the show, and now we're getting it on SmackDown as well. So don't love that. Prefer things be staying on Raw, but for now, I guess it is what it is. Paul doing Paul Heyman things, calling out. It is interesting that Randy all of a sudden is up on Cody's. I know he was out for a bit, and then, but it's interesting now how all of a sudden he's Cody's sidekick. I kind of would prefer him not. I think I just don't love the team, but I guess you have to put Cody with someone if he's going to be going up against the Vision. So I guess that is what it is. But yeah, typical mind games being played by Heyman, and a decent enough promo to kick off the show, I guess. With the Sami Zayn match, though, much more to talk about there. Obviously, Carmelo getting taken out by Miz. I think we've kind of seen that coming. Assumed it would kind of go that way. Well, I assumed it would go down. Just wasn't sure who would be the heel and who would be the face. It does appear that Miz maybe will be the heel, which is interesting. I probably would have called that the other way, but regardless, I think if this means Carmelo's going to get a push as a single star, Miz is usually a jumping point for that in a lot of people's career over the last 5-10 years. It feels like so that's a great. I'm all for that. As for the match we did get, yeah, Aleister Black, that stat that they rolled off of him not having a singles title shot on the main roster was pretty mind blowing, at least to me. Yeah, that was shocking. But yeah, I thought I had a great match here, and legitimately a few times it felt like, the 2 counts were so close to 3 that I legitimately thought, maybe, especially because of the fact that they were hitting that never had a singles opportunity was doubtful. But a match that makes you kind of question, even if it's for a split second, I think is a definition of a good match. So, and yeah, I've hit on the Blue Thunder Bomb thing. I think in weeks prior, a massively underrated move, and there for a while it was kind of a running joke, like, well, he's not going to win the match. He never has with that Blue Thunder Bomb. And now for it to be kind of a follow-up to Helluva Kick, that's quite the combo. So I think the way he's been selling it, I think you could get away with doing the Blue Thunder Bomb as a finisher as well. But obviously, in desperate times, maybe coupling both of them together. Regardless, both of them are very cool moves. So not a lot of people can claim that they have 2 finishing. I know technically, I think the Thunder Bomb is the signature, but keep this up, and it will be a finisher in no time. So all for that, great combination, and a really good match. In terms of how it ranks with the other ones, I don't know. They've all been so good. It's kind of hard. There's very little space in between in terms of which ones I would probably rate the highest. But this one definitely feels like it's probably up there towards the top. And then yeah, obviously Damian Priest continuing to kind of play back with Alistair. And I think, yeah, they announced later in the night that next week they'll have a last man standing match between the two. So maybe that'll be the blow off kind of there. Maybe we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, decent enough first half, kind of second half heavy the way I organize this. But regardless, this is our only singles match of the night. The rest are tags matches. So I thought that was interesting looking back on the card as well.
Yeah, it is quite interesting. We talk about the dynamic of SmackDown, over and over and over again. It's like a running, bit of conversation every single week. Not going to dwell too much on that right now because we'll go into our second half of SmackDown. And this sees two individuals who aren't normally around on Friday nights. So we got a little bit of an influx of different people of late. Whether that's a a good thing because you could argue, oh, okay, well, we're getting new talent up and stuff. This is great. Or you could argue maybe, well, what about the rest of the SmackDown roster? I won't talk too much about that one right now, but what I will say is that Sol Ruka and Zarya, they would have a tag team match here from NXT, being up on SmackDown, taking on the team of Chelsea Green and Alba Fire of the Secret Service. So I think Chelsea and Alba are still a little bit lost with the lack of Piper Niven. Looking for that next person. They've sort of been like teasing over the last few weeks. With Piper being on a very long-term injury, looks like they are going to need to get somebody in sort of like to fill that void. But yeah, doesn't seem to be any luck so far on that front. As to who it's going to be, I have no idea. But for this tag team matchup, I mean, Sol Ruka and Zarya, they pretty much just did exactly what they needed to do. It didn't take that long for them to get a victory here. It was relatively short fashion. It wasn't like quick, but they didn't seem to have to go through a grueling match to get the victory in the end here. But yeah, I thought they looked very impressive, and they have done on NXT for a while. This is a team that you never know quite what you're going to get with these two, whether they're going to be on the same page, whether they're going to be a little bit sort of like miscommunicating with one another. But yeah, they seem to be firing on all cylinders in this one. So yeah, coming up to the main roster, putting on a match on SmackDown, looking like they're doing a good job. And it's not the first time they've been on SmackDown this year either. So they had one, I think, going into, was it Evolution? I want to say they were part of a matchup. So yeah, they are starting to sort of like familiarize themselves with the brand, and they're looking like like fitting like a glove. They seem right at home here. So fair play to both of those women. But yeah, it was a decent enough match. I quite enjoyed it. And Secret Service, yeah, they are looking a little bit lost right now, which is a bit of a shame. But I guess until they find that third person, they'll probably be stagnating like this, which is unfortunate. It's a little bit of a sour patch, but we'll see how they fare going forward, and hopefully they'll figure out something soon. Into our next segment, and what I thought at first could have been done via email, it was the Women's Crown Jewel Championship contract signing, and up until a certain point, it did very much feel like one of those meetings at work that could have been dealt with via an email. It was only until a little bit later on where we'd have Julia and Kiana James that'll come on down that things would actually take a little bit of an interesting twist, I suppose. But prior to that, it would basically be a very respectful, greeting between the two women. Stephanie Vicaire, Tiffany Stratton, both showing respect to one another. Steph would say she should be champion for a couple of weeks, but she's not going to lose anytime soon. She has no intention of that, and may the best woman win. Tiff responding likely, just in likeness to Stephanie, showing respect back to her, before basically then saying, she's always wanted to face off against Stephanie since she was signed to WWE, and now this is her chance. But only one woman can walk into Crown Jewel and then walk out with that Crown Jewel Championship, and that's going to be Tiffany Stratton, because, WWE runs on Tiffy time. As Tiff, and Stephanie have a handshake, they both sign the contract. Tiff walks off up the ramp, and then that's where we get Julia and Kiana James coming on in. Julia attacks Tiffany, laying her out on the ramp, and then Kiana takes the mic and basically starts recognizing Stephanie's talents, building her up, hyping her up, saying how good she's been, but how good she could be under the influence of Kiana James and alongside Julia as well. She says she can hit the highest of highs, even higher than what she's hit so far, and she's literally talking to the women's world champion, so obviously she's very very high up on the roster at the moment anyway. It gets to a point where Kiana says, oh, you don't want to end up turning out like Tiff, And that's where Tiffany Stratton would come back onto the scene. She would drag Kiana James out of the ring and sort of like dealing with her very quickly there. She get back into the ring, and this is where Stephanie and Julia would start throwing hands against each other. Stephanie would look for the SVB. Julia gets out of the hold and then just is pulled to safety by Kiana James as the two sort of like just wander off, basically trying to escape the situation. So yeah, thank goodness for Kiana and Julia at the end, because this was probably one of the most pointless segments in the entire history of wrestling up until that point. And at least we got something to go off of, later on with that. But as to where this goes, what could it be, a tag team match maybe next week on SmackDown between these two and Julia and Kiana? Possibly, it could be. And then obviously those two will then go into their Crown Jewel Championship match, the night after. That seems to be what we're doing here. Maybe just giving them some sort of direction, some sort of like thing just to fill a little bit of time up until that matchup, and just to give them something to do. So yeah, that's what I took from this one. Whether that's the case or not, we'll have to wait and see. But thank goodness for Kiana James and Julia for at least adding some interest in this situation. The match itself should be great at Crown Jewel, but the contract signing, yeah, it's a little bit lackluster, right? When you've got two faces being respectful, we're not used to that. This was very different. Going into something, I guess, a little different afterwards as well, we would then have a tag team match, which would see Los Garza going up against Rey Fenix and Javon Evans. This was stemmed from a backstage segment earlier in the night. Javon Evans with Nick Aldis, very interesting conversation. Basically, Nick saying how, you were great last week on SmackDown. It was awesome to have you here. And, I'll keep your name, at hand in case of any future opportunities, sort of thing. Javon, he's loving it. He's liking that idea. And we would have Los Garza coming on in, basically saying, why are you wasting time on this kid for? We get Rey Fenix inserting himself into the situation, saying, you know what, I teamed with him before, a few months ago. This kid's the real deal. He's great talent. And then that will sort of step up, a situation for a match, which was happened on SmackDown. And this was a fun contest. This is really, 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 really fast paced. When you get Javon Evans and Rey Fenix in the matchup, you're going to have a great time watching it regardless. And Los Garza, they've been very impressive this year as well. We've spoken about this a few times too. So just generally speaking, just a lot going on in this matchup. I had a great time watching it. I thought it was a lot of fun. And this tag team centered second half of SmackDown. I thought this was probably the better of the tag team contest throughout the night, just in my opinion personally, just because of how crazy it was. There was just so much going on, and Javon looks like an absolute star. He always does on NXT. He can kill it here on SmackDown. Rey Fenix, great to see him again in action. He doesn't get involved enough, in my opinion. And I think Los Garza put on a decent display for themselves as well, as they always do. They're pretty consistent. So Javon and Rey Fenix getting the victory as well was great to see. They had a match against Los Garza, prior this year. And this is when they were the AAA Tag Team Champions, and at the time they would win that match. So I guess really 1-1 between these two teams, months apart, but a little bit of a payback for Javon and Rey Fenix. And then, like I said, Tag Team centered second half. We've then got the Vision going up against Randy Orton and Cody Rhodes in the main event. So this stems from the interaction earlier on at the start of the night. And we would get the match going on pretty much as you'd expect. Both teams looking pretty strong in their own rights here and there. It gets to a point eventually where Paul Heyman distracts the referee as Randy's looking for an RKO on Bronson Reed. Seth comes out of nowhere, just appears out of absolutely nothing, and he hits a stomp on Randy Orton. That gives Bronson Reed a chance to hit a tsunami onto Randy to get the victory in this matchup. You got a little bit of a post-match situation where, Seth, they celebrate and stuff, and they're walking up the ramp, and Paul Heyman, he can see what Seth's thinking. He can literally tell what he wants to do. And he's telling Seth, no, don't do it. Don't do it. And Cody is literally on his knees in the ring. He's just sort of like consoling Randy Orton, talking to him, checking that he's okay. And, with Heyman telling him, no, don't do it, what does Seth do? he eventually goes and does it anyway. He goes in, he tries to stomp on Cody Rhodes, but he doesn't hit the stomp because Cody basically baits him in, and that would give Cody enough time to hit a crossroads onto Seth, and that would end the show. So, Nick, we got a lot to talk about here in terms of tag team action. Sol Ruka and Zarya, we've seen them on NXT. We've seen them on SmackDown here and now as well. They look impressive when they get in the ring, and we got them on the same page this time, which is always good to see. Tiffany Stratton and Stephanie with that very respectful contract signing, and then the very disrespectful Julia and Kiana James straight afterwards. The tag team match, very crazy offense there from Javon, Ray Phoenix, and Los Garza. That was a lot of fun to watch. And then what about that main event with Seth? Just I guess disobeying Paul Heyman, maybe just not taking his advice, not heeding his warning. Yeah, interesting stuff with the Vision there. Our second installment of that Vision sandwich. What did you make of it all?
Yeah, you hit on it a little bit, but it's interesting to see all this NXT talent up on SmackDown and kind of, took the words from my mouth, and that, if you're a SmackDown superstar, you have to be a bit a bit peeved, especially considering how quick these shows are, how hard it is to get on the show in the first place. So it's an interesting decision there. I'm not sure who that's coming from, but if I'm a SmackDown guy who's having trouble getting on the shows, have to be pretty annoyed at that whole thing. But just put that real quick in there. Zaruka, they're looking good, of course, on the same page, because we've seen them not be on the same page so often, and they usually just write it off, and the next time you see them, they're good to go. So yeah, it is unfortunate to see Chelsea Green and Alba Fire on the losing end there, but as you mentioned, I guess they can only win in threes. I think they should be able to win as just a team with the two of them. But if it is the three, there aren't a ton of options on SmackDown, but you could obviously pull someone from Raw, maybe, and or even NXT. That's always an option. Plenty of women down there. So if that is what they need to do, then I guess do it. Depending on how long Piper Niven's going to be out. Yeah, and that contract signing, I was just saying they're waiting for something to happen. I was like, are we not going to get a single table being broken during this contract signing? This has to be a first. But yeah, a little bit of chaos there. But I think, I like you said, the match itself, I'm looking forward to. Face to face, for two faces, contract signing. Interesting decision there, and interesting that Julia going after Tiffany Stratton there. Um, maybe it's nothing, but it definitely feels like maybe something. And then yeah, they did announce later in the evening that tag match will be Vaquer and Tiffany Stratton going up against Julia and Kiana. So pre-show, a bit of a warm-up, if you will. And in the tag match, yeah, or the second tag match, I should say, Javon and Ray Phoenix, yeah, they made a pretty good team. I think they could definitely do something in the future. Interesting decisions with Javon and Nicholas there. But yeah, the match itself was kind of like anything you can do, I can do better. Everyone kind of going for their big moves there, and I think Los Garza is an underrated team that deserves some more respect than they get. But ending of the match, that super cutter and the MFB from Ray Phoenix, I completely agree. Ray Phoenix is massively underrated as well. So just a bunch of guys that could have bigger roles in the future, in what was definitely the best tag match of the night. So, and then getting into that last bit of the Vision sandwich, it's I don't mean to be negative, but it does feel like we see this match many times, slightly different iterations, but for the most part, the outcome is typically the same. This one being a bit different because it has Randy in it, but then not really, because Seth comes in, gets the curb stomp as Paul is distracting, and then tries to go back in. A bit overzealous, sees the opportunity to stomp Cody as well, but ended up eating a Cody cutter instead. So yeah, the combination, and it's hard not to mention it. Just the combination of these NXT talents, which obviously we're quite fond of, but the combination of that, the Vision, and then obviously Vaquer being over on SmackDown, which has its place now, obviously building up to Crown Jewel in these matchups, but definitely probably could put them on Raw as well, or instead. Ideal for the show that lasts, I think, an hour and 26 minutes after commercials. So yeah, it's just more of the same, really, and unfortunately, it just felt like the women's tag match felt like it got like a few minutes. The main event got the longest time, which is, you could argue, should get the least time, because we see them all the time, and there are just very few people that we could see every single week as a main event and not get tired of them. And don't get me wrong, I like the team, I like everyone involved in it, but there was, I think, the week that you left, KP, we had gotten two main events that weren't division, and I was like, oh, holy hell! And now we're back to division on both brands. So yeah, I prefer, just if you're going to give us a vision main event, we don't need the sandwich. Just give us open face, or just give us, just the one segment. I think is plenty, especially if they're on both shows. So that's a bit of a nitpicking, I know, but yeah, it does get old, and it's hard to get excited about a main event when you see the same guys involved every single week. So with that, yeah, there were exciting parts about this, but overall, I felt like this, a lot of this, you know there were pretty dull moments as well, so they definitely matched the exciting part. So I give it a 7, and I feel that's being a bit generous even, for as much as I complained. But there were good bits, obviously some of the tag matches, and obviously Sami Zayn. Sami Zayn is the saving grace of SmackDown right now. I think that's fair to say. But yeah, would like to see a few new things after this crown jewel build is over.
I couldn't agree more. I think there are definitely things that are going in the right direction, and there are definitely some things that, just sort of do stagnate. When you got Crown Jewel, you got the champion versus champion stuff going on. It doesn't really allow you to build up a world title matchup, that we'd normally see. So this is sort of like a little bit of a break in between. You got to like fill them doing things here and there. So it is difficult. You take like a really high profile story away from people watching at the time, but just because of what's going down, you don't really have an option. You have to do that. So no real sort of criticism to SmackDown there, because Raw have to do it as well. But it does sort of take some prestige away from it. And I think really at the moment, the only really prestigious thing on SmackDown right now probably is the United States Championship, which they are doing really, really well. The Open Challenges are working for me. There have been some really good matches going on there. And yeah, I think on that front, they're killing it. It's just a shame that, outside of that, it is just looking a little bit, lackluster, unfortunately. There are some bright sparks, here and there. I think John Evans has been killing it recently, coming up from NXT, and the introduction of Sol Ruka and Zarya. That's another women's tag team, so that's always a good thing. But yeah, I don't know. There's just pros and cons for sure. You can take things, you can obviously look at things, you can be like, right, well, these are not quite going in the right direction. So SmackDown, yeah, I don't want to go too much on it, but I gave it a 7 out of 10 as well. I think it's a decent show. It did a lot of things that I think are going in a decent direction. But I mean, for a SmackDown that had a bit of Raw in it as well, again, taking away stuff from, SmackDown superstars, there's only so much you can really do with that. So yeah, would love to see more stars from SmackDown involved in this running thing that we say every single week. It's unfortunate, but it's the time that we're in. As for the SmackDown recap, guys, that's everything that we have to say here at The Push. So if you agree or disagree with anything that we've been saying here today, please let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts on everything that's going on Friday nights right now. If you liked what you saw here, then please subscribe to our channel, keep up with future content, and consider liking this video as well. But for now, everyone, this has been The Push with Nick and KP, and we'll see you all again real soon. Take it easy, and goodbye for now.